Hey, y'all, welcome back. You're listening to the Authentic Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Ruthie Gray, and I'm about to go on an Instagram sabbatical. I realize today is April 1st, but this is not an April Fool's Day joke. Now, before you wig out, I just want to explain something to you. You may have listened to my private podcast last week where I explained a little bit about this. So if you're not subscribed to that, you'll want to go ahead and hit the link in the show notes here that we'll have for you. So you can get some behind the scenes on that. But honestly, I'm tired. Q1 was busy. Q1 is always busy for me, and I know that it's going to be like that. And this year was no different. In fact, it was escalated a little bit. So by the time April rolls around, I'm just like ready to crawl underneath a rock and hibernate. But I don't want to completely disappear from Instagram. And so I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do for the month of April. Hint, it's only stories, and you're going to hear about it next. Listen in.
Welcome to Authentic Online Marketing with Ruthie Gray. Growing awareness for your blog, podcast, book, or product involves more than dancing to reels and yelling, "Buy my thing." This show models quality over clamor so you can put your spin on your message and market in a way that feels authentic to you, because nobody wants to sound like an infomercial. And now, here's your host, Ruthie Gray.
Now, I know a lot of you out there are thinking, why is she doing this? She's going to lose followers, or she's going to not grow. Why would she do something like this? Well, this is something I did about a year and a half ago. Rewind to October 2022, and I actually held a challenge, and a bunch of people joined the challenge. They learned about stories and how to effectively share them, why Instagram stories are still key to client conversions, how to create engaging stories that represent your voice, and how to be wise on the app and not lose track of time in just 10 to 20 minutes a day. Those were just a few things challenge participants learned, including 5 ways non-followers can discover you through stories. Like I said, I'm not doing a challenge, but what I am going to do is share in this podcast and the next 2 episodes of Authentic Online Marketing some story tricks of the trade that I've learned along the way that work. So if you haven't followed me for very long, or you've just found this podcast, or you're new to Instagram, or perhaps you've had a pivot, or maybe you need just a good refresher of the point of stories, or maybe even you still don't quite get them or what to share in them, this will be a good refresher for you. So there was a podcast that I'm also going to link in the show notes called What to Do with Pinned Posts. And we taped that podcast right before our Instagram story challenge, because the pinned post feature on Instagram came out right before we did this challenge, and they made the challenge easier. So basically, here's the summary, okay, of what I did and what I'm going to do for 30 days in my stories that will still generate traffic to my website, to my podcast, to my offerings, and to my email list. And speaking of email list, if you are not regularly driving traffic from Instagram onto your list and gathering followers onto that email list, then you're missing out. You are camping out on rented space. Instagram calls the shots. They decide who gets to see your post, whether it's a lot of people or not a lot of people. They decide what features go and what features stay. One day you may wake up and realize, I don't have the captions feature anymore, or I don't have the music option, or where did this sticker or that go? Sometimes Instagram goes completely down along with Facebook. And there goes your content. You can't connect with your followers. This is why it's so important to have an email list. By doing this myself and having these particular podcasts about stories, I'm hoping to get across to you that no matter what happens to you on social, you own your email list and you get to decide when you're going to email them, how much you're going to say, and how often. The chance of a person reading your email is quite a lot higher than the chance of your followers seeing your post. Something you're going to see me do after April, after I start going back to reels and posts on Instagram, after I'm done with just doing stories for April, what you're going to see me start doing is less and less factual information and tips about online marketing on social media, and more in my newsletter, on my podcasts, and within my courses and offerings and coaching. You see, my Instagram is just a storefront. The goods are inside. So if you really want to learn an authentic way to market yourself, to grow your email list, your Instagram, and the many other facets that come along with all of that stuff, you want to be on my email list. I do not take that newsletter lightly. I always share things that are very relevant and meaningful and time-tested, and ways for you to be yourself and present your own message in your own authentic voice. That's what this is all about. So here's what I'm going to do. So on Instagram, we have what is called the grid of 9. That's your top 9 posts. Those are the posts most frequently seen when someone comes to your profile and checks out what you have to offer. So my top 9 posts are going to be centered around my offerings, my newsletter, recent podcast, my private podcast, and other ways for people to learn from me. In order to situate my grid of 9 the way I want it, I'll be archiving some posts. Did you know you can archive a post and then unarchive it later? So let's say you decided you wanted to take an Instagram sabbatical, but still be present somewhat. So you decided to do a few weeks only doing stories. You could go ahead and archive posts that really aren't relevant during that time. And what you can do is pin 3 posts from your grid of 9 that you really want highlighted. And then what you can do with those is you can unpin and pin other posts within that grid of 9 during the time that you're only doing stories. It just depends on what you want to highlight. It's kind of like treating your Instagram as if it's a business card. And that's what I'm doing. And so I'm going to just be sharing stories every day, Monday through probably Saturday, definitely Friday, and then taking 24 hours off. So that's going to be either Saturday or Sunday, usually Sunday. I want to encourage you to do the same. We need to get off of social media for at least 24 hours a week, if not 24, 12, because we see so much and we ingest so much information that it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's no wonder we're always in panic mode. So let me just encourage you to do that. Another good reason to be off of stories for 24 hours is it's good to not post a story for 24 hours, because when you do that, then next time you post a story, your views go up. They really do. Try it and see. It's a proven fact. What I'm going to do is share whatever I want in stories for the day. It may be my recent podcast, and I'll probably have an image to put in my stories. And then I will include the podcast link people will be able to go there and see that. And then I will share that to a highlight so that people can go and tap on that highlight from my podcast or whatever the highlight is for the day and find the information that they need. See, the thing is, it's really hard to get people to go to your link in bio and click off to your website, to your newsletter, to other places. And this is why using the stories link is so smart, because people can just go there and click on it and go. They don't have to hunt for your link in bio. They don't have to do 2 more taps. They can just click on your link. They can watch your stories. Something else I'm going to do is probably take from my grid of 9, one of the posts every so many days and share it to my story and then expound on it and talk about it a little bit, whatever the topic is. Stories are fun because you can share so much behind the scenes. And this is how you develop a trust and conversations with your audience. The messages and the DMs start in stories. People respond to what you're sharing when you share things that they're interested in, and they will naturally respond. And stories don't always need to have an agenda. Stories can be what you ate for breakfast. You'll get a lot of feedback on that because people are opinionated about their breakfast. They're opinionated about their coffee. People like to weigh in, and a way to get interaction and engagement, the most engagement on Instagram comes from stories, because you can use polls and you can use the slide stickers and you can use question box stickers. You can geotag locations. You can @mention people, and they might share your content so that their friends can see it and other people can learn about you. The possibilities of stories are endless. They're just so interactive, and that's why I love them so much. It's no secret that I love stories more than anything else on Instagram. The stories are my favorite. For me, the stories come naturally. They may not for you. So I would invite you to take some of these tips that I just shared and make sure you're subscribed to my private podcast and my newsletter. Hint, if you're subscribed to my private podcast, you're going to get my newsletter. And I'm going to share more tips within those 2 vehicles for you to learn more about how to effectively use stories and what to share. So if you're at a loss, you don't really know for sure about stories, you're going to want to sign up for those things. And you're going to want to listen to the podcast all the month of April. So the goal is to just hop on Instagram for 10 to 20 minutes a day, post in stories, and go interact with a few other people in their stories. That's it. I'm probably not going to spend too much time commenting on other people's posts. Although every once in a while, I may want to cheer a sister on if her book launched, or if I see something that I really think I should encourage someone with, I might comment. But for the most part, I'm going to be camping out in my stories and in other people's stories. We're also going to cover Instagram insights and analytics to track the performance of your stories. What metrics are important? And then at the end of April, we're going to talk about how to repurpose your stories for ongoing content, because that is a real thing. It's something I do all the time. I almost do it in my sleep and don't even think about it. But I realize a lot of you out there may not even know the power of repurposing your stories, let alone your Instagram content. Thanks again for joining me today. I hope you'll follow along in my stories for the month of April. If you found this podcast interesting, would you do me a favor? One of 2 things. I would love a review on our podcast. We recently got a review from Lori Margot, and she said, Ruthie delivers value every single time on her podcast episodes. She talks about the how-tos of Instagram along with super helpful tips that you can immediately put into action. Thank you so much, Lori, for that. So all you have to do is, if you're listening to Apple Podcasts, just go over there and tap the 5 stars. You'll probably have to scroll all the way down through all of my episodes to find the ratings and reviews. Tap the 5 stars, and there's a purple place that you can tap to leave a review. We would love it so much if you would do that. In fact, we will put a link in the show notes as an easy way for you to leave a review. So that's one way you can support the podcast. And the other way is simply snap a picture of this podcast on your phone, wherever you're listening to it, and share it in your stories and tag me. We will see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks for joining me today. Until next time, be sure to share your message, your way, and your own authentic voice.